All right, let's talk about something that's on pretty much everyone's mind, your paycheck. Today, we're digging into how that number that defines so much of our lives is actually decided. I mean, have you ever really stopped to think about how that number gets set? Is there some grand formula? Is it just a feeling? Or maybe someone just throws a dart at a board? The answer, as you're about to see, is a fascinating mix of all of the above.
Because for any company, setting pay isn't just about handing out money. It's this incredibly high-stakes balancing act. If you nail it, you get the best people. But if you mess it up, it can wreck everything. Who you can hire, how much your products cost, you name it.
So let's kick things off with why this matters so much. Why is getting this pay structure right one of the most critical things any organization can do?
Well, you can think of a pay structure like a Swiss Army knife for a business. It's got to do 4 really important jobs all at once. It has to be tempting enough to attract new talent, good enough to keep your top performers from leaving, motivating for the whole team, and it has to do all that without breaking the bank. That is a seriously tough puzzle to solve.
And that's the key takeaway, right? A well-designed system is about so much more than just the dollar amount. It's about ensuring fairness, staying competitive, and making sure everyone in the company is rowing in the same direction, aiming for the same goals.
And hey, this isn't just some textbook theory. Look at the media company Insider. They decided to make their pay policies way more transparent. And guess what happened? Their hiring got more efficient and their employees were happier. It just goes to show you being clear and fair actually pays off.
Okay, so that's why it's so important. Now, let's get into the what. What are the big forces that actually push and pull on your salary? Turns out, it really boils down to 3 things: the law, the market, and, you guessed it, the mind.
So you've got the legal side of things, the rules you just cannot ignore. Then you've got the market, the raw competition for good people. And then there's the psychological piece, that deep-seated human need for things to feel fair. Let's break each of those down.
First up, the law. This creates the absolute guardrails. We're talking about rules against pay discrimination. Then there's minimum wage. The federal floor is $7.25 an hour, but states can go higher. You've also got overtime pay. And now a big one. Pay transparency laws, where some states are saying, hey, you have to put the salary range right there in the job ad. These are the absolute non-negotiables. All right, next up is the market. And this is where you get this constant tug of war. On one side, you have the product market. This is all about what the company can actually afford. That sets the ceiling on pay. Pulling on the other side is the labor market. This is what the company has to pay to get people in the door. That sets the floor. The sweet spot is somewhere in the middle of that tug of war.
And that brings us to the third force, the human mind. This might just be the most powerful one of all. There's a fancy term for it, equity theory, but you already know exactly what it is. It's that gut feeling when you think, wait a minute, that's not fair. We are all hardwired to do this little calculation in our heads. We weigh our inputs, our effort, our skills, against our outputs, like our pay. But here's the kicker. We immediately compare our ratio to other people's. That's why you can be totally thrilled with your salary right up until you find out the person next to you makes a little more for doing the exact same job.
Okay, so you've got these 3 big pressures: law, market, and mind. With all that in mind, how does a company actually sit down and build a pay structure from scratch? Let's look at the traditional blueprint.
The traditional way is pretty logical, really. It's a 3-step dance. Step 1, you evaluate the job, not the person, based on things like skill and responsibility. Step 2, you group jobs that are worth about the same into pay grades to keep things simple. And Step 3, for each of those grades, you define a pay range with a clear minimum, midpoint, and maximum.
But you know, that rigid traditional ladder isn't for everyone anymore. The world of work has changed. A lot. So the thinking behind how we get paid has had to change too. Let's check out some of the modern alternatives that are popping up.
So a lot of these newer models are all about one word: flexibility. You've got broad banding, which basically means having fewer but much wider pay grades. Then there are things like skill-based pay or competency-based pay. These totally change the game. Instead of paying you for your job title, they pay you for the skills you have and what you can actually do.
And here's a perfect example. Take a look at the old IBM. Their system had 24 different salary grades. Just imagine that, 24. That is a very tall, very specific ladder you have to climb.
And then, look what they did. They completely flattened that structure, collapsing all 24 of those grades into just 10 wide bands.
With that one move, they suddenly had all this new flexibility to shift people between projects and reward them for growing their skills. It broke them free from that super rigid, old-school way of doing things.
But here's the thing. You can't just build a pay structure and then walk away. It's not a set-it-and-forget-it kind of deal. You have to think of it more like a living, breathing thing that needs a regular checkup to make sure it's still fair. And for that checkup, HR departments have a go-to tool. It's called the compa ratio. Now, I know it sounds super technical, but the idea behind it is actually really simple. All you do is take an employee's salary and divide it by the midpoint of their pay range. Boom! It gives you an instant snapshot of how that person's pay lines up with the company's official policy.
So let's break that down. If your comp ratio is a perfect 1.0, you're paid right on target. If it's below 1.0, that's a red flag for potential underpayment. And if it's above 1.0, well, that could signal potential overpayment. Companies use this little number to scan their whole workforce and spot any fairness issues that need fixing.
All right, so let's wrap this up by looking to the future. Because the conversation around pay never really stops. And right now, it's heading into some really challenging, really interesting territory.
Just think about this number for a second. Over $23 million. That's a common figure for CEO pay at many of the biggest companies. And numbers like that, you can imagine, are putting executive compensation under a massive, massive microscope.
And that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Today's biggest pay controversies are all swirling around a few key things. These massive executive pay packages, the wage gaps between different groups that just won't seem to go away, and this huge, growing demand from all of us for more and more pay transparency.
And all of that leaves us with one huge question for the future of work. As these old walls of salary secrecy start to come tumbling down, are we finally heading toward a world where fairness in pay is the standard, not the exception? That's a question that every company, and really every single one of us, is going to have to think about.